Honestly, I wouldn't be all too surprised if you got confused about these clay guys, because if we're all being real, this is basically what the Rock's going to look like in 60 years, if he even lasts that long. He's going to be this shriveled up, rocky thing that is just lanky and weird. But contrary to what you no doubt thought upon seeing them, there is a lot more to them, and it links into oracles, and it links into the elusive sun realm that we learn of inside of Elden Ring's base game. This is a video I'm really excited to make, so I hope you do all enjoy as well. I only just found out that apparently my YouTube notifications for my channel are all messed up, and I've only just fixed it. So now if you do want to put notifications on so you know when I've dropped a video, then drop a sub and then put the all notification, because previously none of you could do that, which was my fault completely, and I'm sorry. Without any further ado, please sit back, relax, grab some succulent, juicy, mouth-watering prawns if you want, and enjoy as we delve into the intricacies of the Sun Realm. Like most things inside of Elden Ring, you have to sort of gather your information more from inferring on details rather than specific item description. That sort of way of looking at things is incredibly important today, because there's only one item description inside of Elden Ring that talks about the Sun Realm, and it's not much, but there are details in the description which can lead us like clues. Think of it as us going on a kind of a Hansel and Gretel breadcrumb thing, except I'm not going to eat you. The Sun Realm shield states, "Shield of Honour, depicting a city crowned by the sun, it has seen better days. Much like the wear upon the shield, the seat of the sun is long faded away." Further proof of its ancient legacy comes from the actual enemies that drop it. They are all skeletal remains. There are none that are actually real living humans. Something that's been glossed over in my opinion has to be the line where it says the seat of the sun. This suggests that this civilization wasn't just one city. It was multiple, and evidence of this kind of thing can be seen around Elden Ring's world. A great example, in my opinion, being Castle Sol, which shares a lot of similarities with their sort of eclipse sun kind of symbol, and the one we see on the Sun Realm shield. Though just to preface, I do think this was just a base of operations, and I don't think it was actually the capital. And don't worry, stick around, because we are going to be talking about Castle Sol further into the video. The seat of the sun is gone. It says that it's been faded away, much like the wear upon the shield. But don't get your panties in a twist, because we can still find out where this Sun Realm was. And when I clocked this, it blew my mind. Now, a video was made a very long time ago by the tarnished archaeologist, where he discussed meteors crashing down to the middle of the map, causing that middle water bit area we see on the map. This theory was further proven by we see these sort of debris coming up the Divine Towers along the edges of this perimeter. It's very compelling evidence there was a meteor that crashed into the lands between. If we then take into consideration we get no information on where this Sun Realm was, it all starts to click into place. For if we actually look at the location in the middle of the map, there's a bit of a square that is hollowed out where that cloud is on the map. If you go there and look up while the Erd tree is not burning, you'll see something golden hanging over this specific area. I believe the Sun Realm is not talking about a sun. Well, they are talking about a sun, just not in the sort of practical sense that we all thought. I believe it is in fact talking about the Erd tree. What's even crazier about this, and what further proves this, is the Divine Tower looks like it is on the shield. I quite literally only just realised this as I was making this video, but if you look, it's uncanny. The design on there looks almost identical to the Divine Towers we see inside of Elden Ring's world. The only difference is there looks like little walls surrounding them. Possibly they've decayed and fell over as time's gone by, leaving nothing but these Divine Towers in their wake. I believe these Divine Towers were created by the Sun Realm, which brings up a lot of questions. What was their plan, and what was their goal with the lands between? And I think the most obvious and true answer is they had their own age, and they had their own great tree. Now, whether this great tree was actually the original great tree or the Erd tree, which is actually a parasite, is really unknown, and it's really up to your interpretation. Personally, I like to think it was actually another great tree. And there's actually a really good reason why I believe this. Located next to where you can get the Sun Realm shield from certain skeletons, there's also a different type of skeleton, one that wields a scythe. Said scythe is known as the Great Scythe, and it reads in its item description, Great Scythe, comprised of a large blade affixed to a crooked stick. Weapon wielded by aged gravekeepers who tend to the forgotten graveyards throughout the lands between. This weapon is said to have served as a charm against evil spirits in times of old. The placement of the scythe and the fact it talks about times of old, which is sort of reserved for the ancient dynasties, shows to me a connection between these scythe gravekeepers and the Sun Realm. But what really is the kicker is, if they're both from the same time and part of the same dynasty, that means that that age did not bury their dead next to the Great Tree, next to the Erd Tree. Now, the whole idea of placing the dead next to the Erd Tree in the catacombs was so they could be returned to the Erd Tree. If the Sun Realm's age had the ability to not have to put their dead next to the roots and still have them be reborn and have them relive again, then that kind of suggests their age was vastly different to the one of the Golden Order. Which leads me to believe that the Erd Tree was not the Great Tree they were worshipping. I believe this meteor also destroyed a lot of information that was inside of the world. I believe it was a mass regression. A lot of the important information lost to time. For example, the giant corpses we find all over Elden Ring's map. What are they? Well, we don't know. But I think it's very likely that the guys in charge of this Sun Realm did. I mean, it's kind of fitting considering these giant divine towers are giant. The kind of massive that makes you think, did they have a role in building these divine towers? Which is, by the way, a theory that's been going around for a really long time now. And I think when you add that into our theory today, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. Now, whether they were wiped out after the meteor or before is completely unknown, and it's really up to the interpretation of whoever's looking at it. Now, I said information on them is probably gone, but this isn't entirely true, and I believe there are survivors of the meteor, and they continue practicing their old ways. The first of which I believe is the Claymen, and the second, the Oracles. The Claymen are men who are said to infest the bodies of dynastic remains. These Claymen served as ancient priests in an ancient dynasty long ago. This same sort of ancient talk is the same sort of thing we hear all the time about these old dynasties. And considering we don't know much about the old dynasty of the Claymen and Oracles, and we don't know much about the Sun Realm, not to mention some information we're going to theorise in a minute, I think there is a good chance that they are from the same dynasty. It also says in these bubble item descriptions they're searching for lost oracles within their bubbles. Now, we also see oracles inside of Elden Ring. They are heralds of a new age or a new god, and they strike their trumpet when it happens. We can find them at Lindale and the Halig Tree. And this isn't a wording coincidence, for if you actually see the Claymen that are located in the underground of Elden Ring's world, their bubble sorcery is identical to the oracles, the only difference being the colour. And I don't think that's because the technique's any different, but just because they've been underground so long. Perhaps a bit like the Dragonkin soldier inside of Noxtella. It doesn't have proper lightning to go off, so it has this blue tint. Perhaps that's the same thing, being that they haven't seen real sunlight in so long, they've gone for this blue colour instead. There's also the fact that the Claymen do not bleed, and neither do the oracles. This is mentioned in the strip of white flesh, which says, thin strips of flesh taken from bloodless creatures. This is another connection, and I believe they are both of the same species. Something that also needs to be said. You might be thinking, Bubbles, what's that got to do with anything to do with the sun? It doesn't, does it? And you'd be completely wrong. Water and tides are actually affected by the sun. They're called solar tides. They're not as prevalent as lunar tides, but they still have about half the effect. You could also go down the route they also sort of worship the moon, at least in some sense, because if the Earth didn't orbit the sun, and the moon didn't then orbit the Earth, then we wouldn't have that sort of effect that perhaps they're trying to gauge with the whole tides and, by proxy, water bubbles. But wait, Gecko, they don't look the same. Why is that? Well, on the Clayman's harpoon, it says that it's made, the tip, out of a meteoric shard. Now, if we then go and look at the Claymen, they look like the tip of the shard. When you take into consideration that their civilization was probably destroyed by a meteor, I think this gets a hell of a lot darker. Would it be so far-fetched to think that perhaps those that were struck by the meteor point blank were turned into these half-meteor, half-living being? I think the best similarity could be the feral ghouls from Fallout. They were struck point blank, kind of, and then they turned into these beasts, and I think the same thing happened to the Claymen. There's two further evidence points to this. The first of which being that we can actually see that they're not the exact same selves they were before all the clay and the meteoric ore. This is told to us where it tells us that the clay men infest dynastic remains, meaning they're inhabiting the bodies of those that died in the meteor. Now that isn't to say they aren't the same person, but I think maybe the stress and trauma of what they endured was enough to shatter their minds that they became a different person, a different species. Henceforth being known as the Claymen, who in their fractured psyche still scramble around searching for the oracles, the destined future tellers of their civilization. It's well and truly sad, and I think it just shows the amazing storytelling in From Software's games. The second piece of information comes from the Lake of Rot. Now, a lot of people have said that the Lake of Rot is simply, Liurnia sinking down, and that's where it came from. But, I don't think so. If you look on the map where the Lake of Rot is and where the meteor site is, you'll notice it is really, really close. I believe what might have happened when the meteor hit was perhaps a tunnel sort of formed and caved in, leading to this underground area inside and under Liurnia. This is further reinforced, the tunnel point, based on that we actually see tons of tunnels in the underground of Elden Ring's world. I think it would be so very easy for some kind of tunnel to have formed at some point, perhaps in a cave, that slowly has water building up when there's an increased amount of water coming down from the rain, which at certain points then leads it to overflow, and it sort of creates this sort of water stream and then the Lake of Rot we see inside of Elden Ring. Further evidence is that this is the same area we see the Claymen. They're not in the Lake of Rot. They're located in the surrounding areas of these underground bits underneath Liurnia. But located in the Lake of Rot is an interesting character which does further prove this theory. The Alabaster Lord Sword says, a weapon unique to the Alabaster Lords, a race of ancients with skin of stone, who were said to have risen to life when a meteor struck long ago. That is exactly what we were just talking about. And considering the Claymen also have skins of stone, I think it's very likely that they are the same thing, or at least some way related. The Claymen have some sort of slight recollection of their past. Perhaps the Alabaster Lords are exactly the same. What do you all think? I think it's very likely that the Lake of Rot has actually been filled by water over time left over from certain tunnels, which leads to bits of water, which build up over time and slowly fill it. Hell, perhaps the reason why Liurnia is sinking is actually due to there's too much water underneath. Perhaps the water underneath is weakening all the ground and it's leading to the sort of sinking that we see inside of Liurnia. I'm nowhere near a professional when it comes to the reasons for land sinking and why that might be the reason, so please ignore me if I'm completely off base. I don't know enough about it, but that seems quite logical to me. As for what the Oracle's purpose is, well, I don't really know. The only thing we can infer is the fact the Claymen are looking for lost oracles suggests the oracles aren't just something that happened after the meteor, they're a part of the sun's civilization. Which I think is really telling, because if they had oracles with them, surely they would have seen the meteor coming and were able to evacuate. Why weren't they? Why wasn't there all their information transferred somewhere else? I'm honestly 50-50, and I think these two 50-50s actually go together to form quite a good theory if you combine them. I believe it was partially foul play, and also partially they did plan, and they did try. Castle Sol exists in the mountaintop of the Giants, quite far away from where we theorise the Sunrealm city would have been, but like we said, it's the seat of the Sunrealm, not the actual whole empire that got destroyed. I think it would be perfectly reasonable for them to have all sorts of bases over the different parts of the continent. And I believe one of those bases was Castle Sol, for we see things like the Eclipse Hotel, which is an heirloom of Castle Sol. We see all sorts of sun insignias which look like the ones we see on the shield. In my opinion, I do believe this was a base of operations for the Sun Realm and its endeavours further into the continent. Surprisingly here we find Godwyn's followers and those that want to treat Mikola, who want to give him his soulless comrade back. It's really confusing, but I think I have the answer. Why on earth would the Golden Order go, oh yeah, we've got a perfectly good fort, let's just abandon it and never use it again? No, you bloody stupid cow, that ain't going to happen. They are going to use it, and I do believe they did. And I believe it was given to Godwyn. With Godwyn as their liege lord, perhaps he gained their trust, a trust of people that hadn't had a master, a true master, in a very long time. So when he did die, his soul died. They surely would be none the wiser to Miquella's manipulation, perhaps trying to get the knowledge stored away in Castle Sol. An alliance is definitely going on here, for haven't you always thought it strange that the way to get to the Halig tree is past Castle Sol? If you take into consideration that there's an alliance between the people of Castle Sol and Miquella, it makes a hell of a lot of sense that they are in fact protecting Miquella's Halig tree in exchange for one day perhaps going there themselves. Nothing ever comes of the Eclipse research inside of Castle Sol. Nothing ever comes of bringing about a soulless comrade named Godwyn. And I believe the reason for this is it was never the goal. I believe it was all in Miquella's interest to soak up the knowledge of the Sun Realm, because how on earth did Miquella know how to become a god? How did he know the intricacies when he hadn't even been born yet? Yes, Marika told him details, but not everything surely. And yet he knows. That makes me think he learnt it from someone, not Marika, and I believe it was from scriptures and scrolls of the Sun Realm. I mean, look at the Eclipse Hotel. It looks like it's an item from a bygone age. The age of the realm of the sun. So that means scriptures and scrolls and books should still be around. I personally believe that the age of the sun, where humanity and the creatures of the lands between and the lands of shadow were allowed to feel, because at one point in time nothing could feel everything. Everything was one with the one grade, and I believe this is the first civilization. A dawn civilization if you want. And even if they don't know the exact reasons, they still know about this dynasty. Even if they don't know their name, their presence is still felt all over the lands between. So everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel and lets me know you're enjoying this style of content. I'm not going to do that anymore. Please friends, don't you dare go hollow, and may you find your worth in the waking world. See you all in the next one, and goodbye.